In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to build a full stack applications like this from absolute zero to a production ready applications using Claude Code and 5 most powerful MCP servers that I often use for any projects that I build. And we're going to build a real bookkeeping applications that upload bank statements, process receipts with OCR system, and automatically match them with each transactions we have. And you will see how I use Supabase MCP server for database and storage, and also how we can be able to use Shadcn MCP server here to building a beautiful UI components on our applications, and also Spec Kit for planning your entire applications before we write a single line of code. By the end of this, you will have a fully deployed app on Vercel and completely built with Claude Code and those 5 MCP server here to help you to build a perfect application. Now, if you're new to Claude Code and you want a beginner guide, then you can check out this video right here, which I made a complete video on how to get started with Claude Code. But if you're not a beginner, you want to level up your Claude Code development skill, then in this video, we're going to show you exactly how to do that. So with that being said, if you're interested, let's get into it. All right, so before we jump in, a quick intro for those who are new here. My name is Eric, and I have spent years as a senior software engineer at companies like Amazon, AWS, and Microsoft. And I have started this YouTube channel to share everything I have learned along the way, from AI encoding to automations, Web3, career developments, and more, all broken down into practical tutorials that you can actually follow. So if you're ready to level up, make sure to check out my YouTube channel and hit that subscribe button. Now let's get back to the video. All right, so let's take a look at what we're trying to build in this video. So the goal here is we're trying to build a bookkeeping application, and this is the prompt that I wrote using AI here to generate. And the overall project overview here is that we're trying to build an automated expense tracking applications that can use the Google OCR here to extract data from receipts or bank statements for our expense tracking, right? And to put it simply, this is what we're trying to build for the overall system architecture. So here you can see we have our bookkeeping applications, and these applications can handle these kind of main features. So one is that user can be able to upload a bunch of bank statements, and these statements here will be organized and will be tracked inside of our bank transaction table. So basically, if you upload like PDF, CSV data, this application will handle them and break it down into each transaction's records added onto the transaction table. And for each PDF files or CSV data for the bank statements, it will also be stored the file inside of our storage buckets so that we know exactly which file that each transaction come from. Okay. And the second feature is the receipt feature, where user can be able to upload a bunch of receipts, and we're going to use the OCR system here to basically process each receipts, like images, like files, PDF files, and be able to use the OCR here to basically process each receipts, like extract those data, like when it was purchased, what was the amount, who was the vendor, which card it was purchased from, and be able to save those informations onto the receipt table, right? And the third feature is the authentications, right? So user can be able to authenticate themselves, can be able to sign up, can be able to, edit any informations inside of our user table, right? So these are the 3 tables that we have inside of our database. And the most important feature of all is the match transactions, which basically means that we're going to match each transaction from our bank statement, right? From our bank statement right here to each receipts that we have inside of our receipt table. This is really important because if you're a business owner, you're trying to do your bookkeeping, right? You're trying to use AI or basically like OCR system like QuickBooks to basically match each transaction to your receipts. This system or this application will do it for you, right? So basically that's what we're trying to build in this video. And what I really want to show you in this video is basically how I build these applications from the ground up using AI here to plan, to code, to verify, to test, and be able to refine, okay? So in this case, let me show you exactly how I do that. So first thing first, what I usually do here is I'll start with a prompt. So here you can see this is the prompt that I generate using AI, and feel free to use any AI to generate a prompt, right? So this is like 200, 300 words. And what I usually do here, I'll just talk with AI, like just have a natural conversation, explain the AI what you're trying to build. For example, I'm trying to build a bookkeeping applications, and here is all the features that we have listed out, like the receipts, invoice management, which supports JPEG, PNG files, or we're using the Google Gemini 2.5 Flash for the OCR, Supabase for the storage, and also user can be able to view, edit, and delete any receipts. There's also the bank statement management, transaction matching, which will match each transaction with the relevant receipts. And there's also the user authentication, where user can be able to authenticate themselves using the Supabase authentication. So pretty much these are all the features, right? And in terms of the extractions on what are the things we're going to use OCR here to extract, which we are using Gemini 2.0 Flash. So here you can see that these are the list of things that we're going to extract from the receipts, right? So the last 4 digits of car, locations, GST, PST, and the process dates and such. There's also bank statement extractions. So what are the fields, what are the properties we're going to extract from the bank statements? So these are all the things we're going to extract. And here you can see we have our data tables, where the database relationships, right? Data tables relationships with each other's. There's also the user flow, how users going to navigate through the applications. So after we have our prompts, we're just going to move on to installing our MCP servers to create our applications. So the reason why we need to install those MCP servers here is because usually if you want to follow this process, you can definitely use MCP server here to help your AI agents to basically automate a lot of those works. For example, right, let's say if you're trying to do some planning initially for designing our applications, you can use Spec Kit, which is basically a spec-driven development, which will plan out the entire applications or projects before it starts to do the implementation. So if you haven't get started with Spec Kit, you can check out this video right here, which I made on how to get started with spec-driven developments. Basically help you to do research and plan out the entire projects before moving on to the implementations for any project you're trying to plan or design. And the next step is after you have your project planned it, right? You're going to move on to the implementations. And for implementation here, there are a couple MCP servers that I recommend for using Claude Code to help you to implement the project, right? So there are 2 MCP servers here that we're going to introduce on this stage. One is the Supabase, where we're going to give access to the Claude Code agent here, the ability to create our data migrations, our data tables, our mock data, right? Whatever you think of inside of our database, or even for our Supabase storage bucket, we can also do that for our Supabase MCP server. So that's why we're going to introduce this MCP server here inside of our coding stage. And the other MCP server here we're going to introduce is the Shadcn MCP server. Now this one is mostly for building UI. So Shadcn is a UI library, and this Shadcn MCP server is basically using the right UI components that you can add on your application so that you're not stuck with just UI templates that AI generates. And that's a really big one. And if you want to learn more about how to build beautiful UI with Shadcn MCP server, you can check out this video that I made right here for more details. The third step is basically try to use the Playwright MCP server here to test it. And the good thing about Playwright MCP server here is that it's able to open a browser for you, creating a test plan, and be able to test each page, each sections, each components on the actual applications, and making sure that it's able to do what it's supposed to do that we set inside of our initial plan, right? So the AI here has a context about the plan and also the Playwright MCP server. Then it should be able to test everything just like how a user walked through the entire application. And then once it tests everything, then it will generate a test report on what are things fail and what are things good. Then we can be able to use that report to refine our applications for our next phase. So that's basically what we're going to follow in this video for MCP servers. Very simple, try to keep it short and concise. And we're going to build these applications, follow this process. So I'm going to show you exactly how to install this one by one. Now, before we move on to the next section, I want to address the biggest bottleneck in learning this stuff. We all know that reading documentation can be boring, and watching videos can lead to tutorial hell, and sometimes we're just watching videos and are not actually really coding. So that's why I'm introducing this platform called Scrimba, which is completely different. Their platform isn't a video, it's a live code environment. Look, I can be able to pause this instructor right here and edit the code directly in the browser, run it immediately to see the results and verify if the instructor is telling me it's right or not, right? So it forces you to be active and prove you actually understand the logic. Now, of course, if you want to be good at vibe coding, you have to understand the underlying architecture. That's why I recommend checking out their full stack developer path, and it covers the exact modern stack that we're using, like Nest.js, and even the new AI fundamentals like context engineering and MCP servers. And you need to know exactly how these pieces fit together so that you can be able to architect a system that AI can help you to build. So make sure to use the link in the description to get 20% off on Scrimba Pro and start mastering those stack. Alright, so now let's move on to the next part of this video, which is setting up our MCP server. Now, to start to set up our MCP servers here inside our project, first thing first, I'm just going to set up the Supabase MCP server. That's going to be our database core side of our applications, which is our data storage. So to start here, basically you can see I have signed up for a Supabase account, and basically I create a new project right here. And here's, I'm basically going to call it the Bookkeeper AI. And here you can see once I create this project, you can see I have 0 tables, 0 functions, and 0 replicas inside of the project. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click on connect to basically connect our applications, our projects with this Supabase project. So once we click on connect, what we're going to do is we're going to click on the MCP server option. And if you scroll down, it tells you exactly what you're going to do to install it, right? So if you select the client as Claude Code or Cursor, whatever ID you're using, I'm using Claude Code, so here I'm just going to select Claude Code, and it also gives you exact command to install this on your local machine. And simply here you can see I just navigated to the projects, to this empty project, and basically run this command here to add this MCP server onto our Claude Code. Then what I do here is I'll basically restart my Claude Code MCP server and just run the /MCP inside of my terminal. And basically you can see here that I just restarted the Claude Code session and basically do the /MCP. Here you can see that we have one MCP server added, which is Supabase. And all we have to do here is just click on enter to log in. And once we click on enter, we're just gonna click on authenticate to authenticate ourselves for this Supabase MCP server. All right, so once I authenticate myself successfully, this is what it shows. I'm just gonna return back to Claude Code right here. And now you can see that instead of Claude Code, I have Supabase connected, which shows here. Now, the next step here is basically to install Shadcn MCP server onto our local machine. Now, again, if you haven't seen the video for Shadcn UI, check out this video that I made, which actually pops up on the Google search for Shadcn new MCP server. Okay, so basically this MCP server here not only help you to research the right components, but also help you to create one and also help you to plan the UI entirely using their Shadcn MCP server components. So what I do here is I'll just simply come back to the project and first thing first, install the Shadcn latest version onto our project. Then what I'll do here is I'll basically initialize or install the Shadcn MCP server onto our Claude Code configurations, which you can see here that we have installed dependencies and configured the MCP server here. And then now if I were to restart my Claude Code session and basically do the /MCP command, you can see that we have two MCP server connected successfully inside of our MCP server list. All right, so pretty much we have two MCP servers installed correctly, and now we have two more left. So let's get into those right now. All right, so the next one we're gonna install is the Spectrum Development Kit, which is the spec kit from GitHub. And this is the right way to install the spec kit MCP server inside of our project. And you can see that this is the command that I use based on this documentation. And what we do here after we have this installed is we're just going to initialize our project. So we're going to use the specify init, which shows here. So here I'm just going to do specify init for this project. And once I've done that, you can see that it's going to ask me some couple questions on what kind of AI agent we're using for our AI assist. So here I'm just going to choose Claude Code. And what we do here is that here you can see it tells you exactly what the next steps are. So we're going to use the spec kit constitutions to basically establish the project principles, right? And also the specify here to create the baseline specifications. And then we're going to get into our planning and also creating our actionable tasks and also be able to implement each task one by one using our Claude Code coding agents, which again, you can be able to learn more using this video right here. So like what I did here, I basically just follow the documentations. First thing first, I'll just create the constitution, like basic principle on code quality, testing standards, and user experience. So basically I set this as a standard for the first step on spec kits, which you can see here that it basically sets some rules for the code quality on this project. Then what I do here is I'll basically focus on what and why, on what exactly we're trying to build and why we're trying to build this, and basically just try to create a spec for this project. So basically using the specify command here to do so. So here I'm just gonna coming back to the Claude Code session, and I'm just gonna type in specify right here. And simply you can see here that basically you're going to use the initial prompt that I created earlier on what are the features we're gonna have and why we're gonna create this and what exactly we're gonna create this, right? So I'm just gonna copy this prompt and just simply paste it to Claude Code. And then eventually here you can see that it gives you some open-ended questions, which we can be able to actually answer and specify here. So then what I did here is I basically navigate to that documentation, which contains those 15 questions, like needs clarifications. I'm just going to fill in and answer those questions one by one and be able to continue on with the implementation plan. All right, so then what I did here is I basically going to complete the questions, and here I basically ask it to create the plan. And here I provide a tech stack, and you can see it's going to create a comprehensive implementation plan for our project. So here you can see that these are the implementation plan, which takes 12 weeks, but I don't think it will take that long. And you can see that these are the 8 implementation phases based on our implementation plan. So here you can see that for phase 0, which is mostly for research and MCP server setup. Then we also have phase 1 for database authentications, for data migrations, schema, RLS, indexes, generate the TypeScript types, right? And also making sure to build the authentication pages with the Shadcn form components, end-to-end testing, and those kind of things. Then we also have our phase 2 for the receipts, and also have phase 3 for bank statements, transaction matching, and also the dashboard export, and polishing, optimizations, end-to-end testings, and finally documentation and lunch. So pretty much you can see that it breaks down each phase one by one in the right order, and it tells you exactly what we're going to do for each phase. And for the complete project structure, we're using the Nest.js 14 model repo. So for this repo right here, we'll have all the file structure, what it looks like. So once everything looks good, what we're going to do now is we're just going to start to break this plan right here into multiple tasks. So we're just going to do the spec kit tasks, and it'll basically just break the entire plan into multiple, or in this case, a list of tasks. So it tells you exactly that we first have to check out to a different branch. So I'm just going to create a new terminal sessions. I'm going to check out this new branch right here. And basically, I'm just going to run this spec kit tasks on this branch. So here it will automatically detect the features from the feature branch name and load the entire spec.md file and the plan.md file, and basically complete everything from there. So in this case, I'm just going to run this slash command right here again. And here you can see that it generates 137 actual executable tasks that we can execute. So you can see that for each phase, we have a list of tasks. For example, phase 1, we have 9 tasks. And here you can see that this is the entire doc that keeps track of all the tasks for each phase. For example, like task 1 to 9, right? So in this case, let's start with task 1 to 9, right? So in this case, I'm just going to start to do implementation using the slash implementation command. And we're going to do this for tasks 1 to 9 and basically have Claude Code here just to follow the task list and complete it. And after a while, you can see that it has complete everything. And here you can see that the current project status is complete and all the dependencies have added and all the directories files are all completed. So pretty much you can see that this is the step 1, right? So basically do the setup, and all we have to do here is just do the npm install to install all the dependency for our applications. So in this case, you can see that it's going to install this and also try to tell us exactly like we got to add the service rule key and also the Google API key and also and such. So here you can see that these are all the file structure that we have. And in this case, we're just going to add those authentications for our .env.example file. So in this case, I'm just going to add those into .env.local file and basically ensure that all the credentials set up for the phase 1 complete. So in this case, I'm just going to repeat this process for phase 2 and above. And I'm just going to come back after we finish all the phases and before we try to do the verification. So in this case, you can see I'm going to start with phase 2. And here I'm just going to change this to be phase, or in this case, task 10, all the way to task 025, which is the entire phase 2. And before we do so, I also want to make sure to commit everything that we have done for phase 1 to the GitHub repository, right? So that we have all the changes saved before we start to implement the new phase. So I'm just going to enter this and let Claude Code handle the rest. All right, so while I basically have Claude Code build the whole thing, you can see that Claude Code also uses the Supabase MCP server here to set up the entire data table. So here you can see we have 2 tables, receipts, and also the bank transactions. So that's really the power of Supabase MCP server here. We'll give the tool ability for Claude Code here to call the Supabase MCP server here to create the tables, to set up the entire database so that we don't have to manually create those migrations or setting up those tables one by one. So in this case, I'm just gonna continue on with all the phases, and once done, I will come back and review everything. Now, before we jump into the next section, let me give a quick shout out to the sponsor of this video, Testsprite. Testsprite is an AI agent that's specifically for software testing. With the release of the Testsprite MCP, you get a chance to use the Testsprite MCP inside of your coding IDE, like Claude Code, Cursor, Windsurf, and more. With simply just adding the configurations inside of the MCP settings, you can use it right away. With the Testsprite MCP, it not only understands what you want, because it first reads through the code base, understands the documentations, as well as validates the results that your agent wrote. And it is doing that by automatically generating the test plan for the PRD documentations and producing the test cases and test coverage without any manual inputs. And then from there, it will basically start to execute the test and then be able to send the reports back to you by telling you exactly what's broken. With normal coding accuracy of 42% from other coding agents, we can be able to improve that with Testsprite MCP with the feature delivery accuracy of 93%. So if you're interested to try it out, you can check out this video that I made, or you can check out the link in the description for more details. All right, so now you can see that the entire project 137 tasks are all completed using the Playwright MCP servers to test, and also using the Specify here to basically do the spec-driven developments, and also using some other MCP servers like Supabase or any other like Shadcn MCP server here to basically design the elements and also setting up the database. So right here, you can see that we have all the 137 tasks are completed, and these are all the stories for this entire project, like authentications, receipt, and bank statements, also the bulk operation and export, polish, and production readiness. And now if we were to scroll down, there's the production ready features on, for example, like the Vercel, CI/CD pipeline, the legal compliance, error handlings, and such. And if we were to take a look at the specify here, there's also the spec. We can click on the tasks. So now if we were to open this here, you can see that these are all the tasks that are currently all completed using the specify right here. Okay, spec kit driven developments, which here you can see all 137 tasks are all completed, which follow step by step. And now if I were to scroll all the way down, you can see that these are all the tasks has all completed, which you can see that it marked with X, which means that this entire phase has completed. So you can see that the story 6 or phase 8 has completed. The phase 7 and also phase 6 are all completed as well. All right, so in this case, let's try to run the applications in our local environment and try to test the applications to see if it's working, right? So here I'm just gonna run in local environment, localhost 3000. And here you can see that this is our applications. So before I start the application, I also have seeded some data, basically uploaded some receipts and also transactions through CSV and PNG files, right? And here you can see that inside of our receipts tab, you can see that these are all the receipts that I have uploaded in the past. For example, we have our vendor, category, amount, payment method, and here you can see that these are all extracted using the Google OCR. And here is also the file URL, which basically shows exactly where that file is being uploaded, right? So it's uploaded in our storage bucket, which the user here can be able to click on the link and be able to access the image files, right? So here you can see that we have the vendor, the amount, which all match exactly like each records inside of our tables. For example, there's also another record, right? So if I were to click on this, this is another receipt, which match exactly like what we have inside of our table for the receipts. There's also transactions. So if I were to click on transactions, this is where we're going to upload the bank statements. So after I upload some CSV data for the bank statements, here you can see that it renders the data correctly. So here you can see that we have our date, right? We can sort the date by ascending or descending order, descriptions, the amount, right? We can sort by the amount as well. There's also the file URL where we can be able to click on this to view the full CSV data for the entire bank statement. There's also when it was uploaded, like the date on when it was uploaded. And also you can see there's also status on either this transaction is being matched or not, based on if we have a record match with a receipt. And the most important part is the transaction matching, right? So for example, if I were to run the auto match, it will basically match each transactions with a corresponding receipt. So these are all the unmatched items, and these are all the match items that we see here. So here you can see that these are all the receipts, and also the transactions are joined in one single table, right? So we have our date that's being matched, which you can see is October 5th, 2025. There's also the transaction descriptions also match with the vendor that we extracted, the transaction amount, and also the receipt amount, which also match, which gave us a confidence score of 100%. And here you can see if we were to look at some other transactions, like for example, this one, the date here is October 11th, right? So, and if we were to look at the transaction date, it was October 13th, which is like 1 or 2 days a delay, but the amount is exactly the same. And that's why we give a confidence score, automatically match a confidence score of 80%, because there are some properties for both tables are unmatched. I can also be able to click on the file here to see the exact receipt, what it looks like. So that it's much more easier for anyone to be able to bookkeep their business expense and their transactions, right? So pretty much that's how it works for the basic functionality of these applications. But you can see that it integrates all the services pretty well. It renders the correct data, right? So how many items being unmatched and total item being tracked, total tax being paid, which are being calculated. And here you can see that I only upload the months for the month of October, which you can see the chart shows that right here exactly. Okay. We also have the vendors, right? So top 5 vendors that we have purchased, all the max transactions, and also the max amount. And also we have the recent activities, right? And also the data health, the match percentage rate, everything like this we are displaying in the dashboard, okay? And of course, if you want to sign out for the applications, we can simply just click on sign out. And now we're just directly navigate to the sign in page. And now if I were to type in the password for this password right here, and if I were to sign in, okay, it's gonna sign me in. And let's say if I want to download this data for the match records, I can be able to click on the export right here for match records. So I'm just gonna click on export CSV. And let's say if I were to open this CSV right here, instead of a Visual Studio Code, you can open this inside of Google Sheet as well. And here you can see that this is the entire data, which you can see here that we have our receipt date, the vendor, the receipt amount, the transaction date, and also the transaction descriptions, the transaction details, right? And also the link on where you can be able to get the file storage on the receipt URL for file, and also the transaction as well, okay? So you get the full data, you get control of your own data as well, so that, you know, it's not being capped by the applications, right? So overall, you can see that the application pretty satisfied with what we're trying to build here. And overall, I think there's a lot of things we can test, but overall, the main functionality is there, okay? And of course, let's come back to the database right here for a second for the Bookkeeper AI. And if I were to click on the storage here, you can see that these are the receipts and also the statements that we have inside of our database, right? So we have 10 MB. So let's take a look at how many records we have. I'm not sure if it shows, but if we would click on receipts, these are November receipts, right? So these are all the photos for November's. These are all the receipts for December, which currently we don't have any. And if I were to click on the statement bucket, you can see that there's also the CSV for the bank statement, which we can be able to download and be able to view from the user behalf. If I were to click on the database here, you can see that there's also the data table, right? So just like what we mentioned, and inside of our data tables, you can see that we have our bank transactions, we have our receipts. And if I were to click on these tables right here, you can see that these are all the records that's being shown, right? So we have each ID for each receipt, and then we have our descriptions, we have the amounts, the categories, notes, source file URLs, match receipt ID, confidence rates, and so much more, okay? So pretty much you can be able to keep all those data inside of our database so that our application can be able to render those data to the users. And moreover, I also follow the Vercel MCP server documentations, which can help me to, you know, connect this with my AI agents like Claude Code, and basically tell Claude Code that, hey, I want to deploy this application, right? And Claude Code knows exactly what this application is about, you know, how to best deploy it. And here you can see we have our entire applications fully deployed in Vercel, completely using the Vercel MCP server and Claude Code, which here you can see that this is the deployment details. We can be able to click on visit. So if I were to click on this link, you can see that it navigates through the applications, which we have hosted inside of Vercel. And here you can see this is what the application looks like. Okay, so it's no longer a local host applications, it's fully hosted in the cloud. So if I were to come back to the Visual Studio Code and be able to stop the npm run dev, and now if I were to navigate back to this applications, refresh, you can see that it's still there because it's hosted inside of our Vercel, inside of a cloud, so anybody can use it inside of their browser. And just to test, make sure that everything works, I'm just gonna log into the dashboard. Here you can see that all the data that we just mentioned here are all persisted inside of this application. Okay, so we have our database, we have our hosting platform set up, everything is good to go for this application. And next step, once you have this built, pretty much you can be able to have this application here released to the public or set up the domain here and be able to get more traffic to your users. So pretty much that's how we can be able to build our full stack applications using Claude Code, and these MCP server here basically help you to remove that manual process to basically click on different buttons and be able to set things up. You can be able to directly make these happen using these MCP servers with the power of Claude Code. So with that being said, if you do find value in this video, please make sure to like this video, consider subscribe for more content like this. But with that being said, I'll see you in the next video.